Hello, and welcome to another episode of Texas Nation. I'm your host, Grant Levenson. On today's show, we're going to talk some professional basketball, preceded by a great fantasy football segment. It's going to be something you won't want to miss. But first, let's recap on this last week in sports. I would like to start the show talking about the World Series. The 2010 World Series champion San Francisco Giants truly were the better team. This year they outpitched, outhit, and out-executed the Texas Rangers. A team built from pitching completely dominated a team built from hitting. Tiny Tim Lincecum got the better of All-Star Cliff Lee twice in the series in games 1 and 5. Matt Cain outpitched C.J. Wilson, and 21-year-old Madison Bumgarner, a rookie, threw a gem against Tommy Hunter. A team full of outcasts and misfits gave the Rangers some fits every single night. The 2 through 5 hitters for the Rangers, who had been hot all postseason and frankly all regular season as well, went just 15 for 92 at the plate. How do you go 15 for 92 when you have the probable MVP of the American League on your team? But this, for the Rangers, wasn't a series where they lost these games. The Giants definitely outplayed them and beat them. So mad props to them and mad props to the Beard for coming out and closing out Game 5 under the lights. Now to talk a little golf. For the first time in over 5 years, we have a new number one in the world of golf rankings. Tiger Woods, who had had the spot held down for 281 consecutive weeks, has now finally been passed by England's Lee Westwood. Westwood has been on fire in recent years, particularly this year, but he shouldn't get too settled. There's one last tournament being played right now in Shanghai, and if Tiger, Phil Mickelson, or Martin Kaymer win, then they would become the new number one player in the world. So Westwood has no time to bask in his accomplishments. It's right back on the grind for him. Well, now let's move to a subject that seems to always be moving himself, Randy Moss. As we all know, the Vikings decided to cut Randy Moss earlier this week. Coach Brad Childress said that he was a programmatic problem. How do you call a guy who's probably the best deep threat in the game, a guy who's always going to draw double coverage, and a guy who will open up the box for arguably the best running back in the league, a programmatic problem? That makes about as much sense as having an Alcohol Anonymous meeting at a bar. Since being cut, Moss went through the waiver process, and the only team who put claims on him were the Tennessee Titans. And now that's good news for Vince, because it means he has a real wide receiver to throw to. Or does he? 2 weeks ago, many of us saw Titans wide receiver Kenny Britt go off, catching 7 passes for 225 yards and 3 touchdowns. On the year, that makes 23 catches for 435 yards and 7 touchdowns. Now Moss, he's caught 22 balls on the season for 313 yards and just 5 touchdowns. But above the stats, do you know where the big difference is? Kenny Britt has posted his stats with Vince Young and Kerry Collins throwing the ball to him, as opposed to Randy Moss, who has been fortunate enough to have great Tom Brady and the legendary Brett Favre. So with Britt out for a few weeks with a bad hammy, I think this might finally give us a good chance to see how good Randy Moss still is. Well, when we come back, we're going to get into our fantasy football special where we're going to break down all the stats, the busts, and the sleepers. So don't go anywhere.